Okay, thanks for coming, everyone. My name is Dave Draper. I'm an engineer in the UI team. I've been with Alfresco now for about 15 months, primarily working on the share user interface and doing quite a lot of work on the Spring Surf framework. And I'm going to talk to you today about some of the new configuration and extension points that are available in Share. They're actually entirely Spring Surf extension mechanism, so it's not limited to Share, but for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to be doing some demonstrations of how you can use them to extend Share. Okay, so first of all, a little bit of background. If you're in Mike Hatfield's presentation before, some of this might be a little bit similar. But we knew that for Alfresco 4, we needed to provide better extensibility. The main problem that we had people complaining about was that if you wanted to do a customization, although it was possible, you had to cut and paste code, and as soon as you did that, you had a maintenance problem in that if there were updates and fixes going into Share, you were going to have to, keep updating your own extensions, and it obviously isn't the ideal way to do it. So we knew we had to provide some sort of extensibility. We knew that we had specific use cases for the document library, which is what Mike just covered. But we knew we needed to have a much more open-ended way of extending Share. Part of the problem, however, was that Alfresco Share, when it was originally written, wasn't designed as a platform. It was just an application. And Share was built on Spring Surf, and Spring Surf didn't provide any extension mechanism. And we weren't entirely sure of what the use cases were. So we knew that we had to do something. We weren't entirely sure what it was. And we had to be fairly open-ended to sort of cover as many use cases as possible. And in order to do this, these were our goals. We had to ensure that Spring Surf continued to be compatible with all our previous releases, because as you probably know, hence the name, Surf is in the Spring SVN. It operates on a separate release cycle. And we didn't want to branch that in order to have two different versions of Surf to support the different versions of Alfresco. And we also knew that we wanted to minimize Share code changes because 4 is all about stabilizing Share and the repository. So we didn't want to go and do a complete rewrite. And as I said, we wanted to make sure we could do extensions without cutting and pasting, and we wanted to provide a simple deployment mechanism, a nice way of doing this. So that was quite a challenge, really, trying to retrofit something that wasn't there, and with a fairly broad spectrum. So we did a lot of brainstorming. There was between myself and Eric Wineleaf, who's another member of the UI team, and some of the other guys. We looked at various different ways of doing this, and most of it was started out with a free marker extension approach that Eric originally came up with, and then we pulled it into the Share library. And we've come up with 2 distinct ways of doing these extensions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the basic concepts of what we have, and then I'm going to do a demonstration, which is live, so hopefully it'll work, in order to show these things actually in action. So the way we came up with doing this is we had 2 approaches. First of all, we wanted to actually provide a way of extension through targeting existing files. So rather than cutting and pasting a file as a web script or a template, and then using the class path loader to pick that one up before the default one, we actually want to say, well, this is the file I want to extend, and this is how I want to extend it, and I don't want to have to cut and paste it. I just want to make those changes. And the other way we approached this was saying, well, Share is built out of components. How can I actually customize the content of those components? And the way we looked at doing this was we created an entirely in-memory output model. So the way it worked before was as Surf was going through the page and the template, it would just be processing everything out to the main output stream. So instead of doing that, what we said, well, okay, we're going to build an in-memory model of the default content, and then we're going to give extensions the opportunity to go in and change that, remove things, add things, reorder things, whatever you want, so that we can customize the output. And we wanted to do this against FreeMarker and against WebScript. Those are the 2 main things we targeted. And the other thing we tried to do was we knew there was a major problem that lots of people identified in Spring Surf, which there's a one-to-one mapping between region. A template has got, you define regions in a template, and those get bound into components. But because of some of the flaws in the way that the component binding mechanism works, it's only ever possible to bind a single component to a region. So what this meant was, I want to add some more content. I can't just add another component to an existing region. I have to change the template, or I have to change the web script, and that wasn't ideal. So we said, well, what we're going to do is, in order to support backwards compatibility, we're going to introduce another concept. So we've introduced this concept of subcomponents, so that you've still got a one-to-one mapping from a region to a component, but now a component is made up of a number of different subcomponents. And this enables you to add new content in and also remove existing content. And in order to support the existing share versions and the existing configuration, what we did was we said, well, we'll have a mapping approach so that we will generate a default subcomponent for the original component. So all of the sort of legacy, as we call it, share configuration works in Alfresco 4. So the first approach, file customization. As I said, this works with free marker templates, and it works with web scripts. And you can extend, of a web script, for example, you can extend the internationalization properties, the JavaScript controllers, and the free marker templates. The only thing you can't extend is the XML configuration files, which we may introduce in the future, but we didn't think that was as much of an important use case as the other three were. And the way that we've done this is we've changed the region directive, and we've added a new markup directive, which I'm going to explain. But basically, this is on an entirely new framework. So if you want to add new directives, you can just build on top of what we've already provided. So with this approach, what can you do? So a template has got lots of different regions. So what you can do is you can actually target a surf template, and you can actually add new regions, remove existing regions, or modify regions so that the component binding changes. So you're not actually altering the default template, you're actually saying, I want to customize the content. And in that way, you can actually add new components, or you can take existing stuff out. You can change the labels that appear on the screen, and because WebScript is a sort of mini MVC model, you can actually change the model, and depending upon the default behavior, you can actually change the content in that way. And I'll be giving demonstrations of how you can do all of those. So, subcomponents, this was the other approach. A subcomponent, because of the limited time and focusing on common use cases, subcomponents only work with WebScript, whereas the default component previously, you could render against anything, be JSP or default free marker or PHP or whatever you want. Subcomponents only work with WebScript. This is really because basically Share is entirely built. All the components in Share are WebScript, so we didn't really see the point in trying to support all these other things. And again, due to various issues with Surf, we were kind of forced down that path as well. So the way this works is that I don't know how familiar you are with it, but the Surf config allows you to completely change all, customize almost everything. And it's all done via interfaces, so there's a component interface. So from Alfresco up to Alfresco 3.4 and including 3.4, the component interface is implemented by the component import class. But in 4, we're actually using an advanced component import class, which supports the notion of subcomponents. This approach also means if you wanted to change the way that Surf behaves, you can actually write your own implementation of the component classes, should you want to. And the idea of this is it actually supports legacy configuration. So it looks at a component. If it sees just the standard, the old-style component configuration, it will generate a default subcomponent which you can then work with. So everything is subcomponents in Alfresco 4. It's not a mix and match of old and new. And the other thing we wanted to do is support for dynamic evaluation. So we wanted to be able to change the content based on parameters that you describe. So these subcomponent evaluations, so the idea is a subcomponent can have, unfortunately there's a lot of overloaded terms because we've just run out of words for these things. So a subcomponent can have 0 or more evaluations. These are different evaluations from the evaluators that Mike was talking about in the previous presentation. So an evaluation has a number of, or 0 or more evaluators, and if all the evaluators in an evaluation succeed, then that evaluation is used. So the idea is a subcomponent has a set of defaults, and you can also optionally provide some evaluation. If any of those evaluations succeed, then the properties of that evaluation override the default subcomponent. And so the evaluators, it's effectively like an AND gate to all the evaluators. You can have as many evaluations as you want. It basically processes them in order, and the first one wins, effectively. So if you've got multiple extensions, they get processed in the deployment order, and the first evaluation wins, and that will be the one that works. So as soon as it finds one that matches, it stops processing the rest. And the things you can actually override are the web script URL, the properties of that web script, and actually you can't override the index. I've lied, so you should ignore that. I thought I'd done that, but I actually haven't, so that'll probably be something that goes in later. So what can you do with this? You can pretty much do the same kind of stuff. You can add, remove, and modify the content. This time it's done at a component level, not a template level. But interestingly, you can change the behavior of a component, whereas before a component was like a web script, and you could dynamically change things based on the model. This time you can actually dynamically change things based on any information you want to provide. So I'm lying about the reorder subcomponents. Well, this presentation is a little bit out of date, but so you can't do the last thing. But you can, like I said, you can change a lot of the dynamic content. For example, typically you want to do evaluations based on the site or the user to change the behavior, and I'll give an example of that as well. So how are all these things packaged up? So again, massively overloaded terms. I apologise for that, but we felt it was sensible to try and give a meaningful name to these things rather than something that didn't make any sense. So we've got a concept of an extensions and module. An extension would typically be a jar, a single jar which contains your extension config, and that configuration contain multiple 0 or more modules. And so each module would target some area of share. It can do lots of things, or it can do very few things. It's entirely up to you. So you can define this. Sorry, I was going to say you can define this actually within the application. So an example: if you go straight to the module deployment page, you'll see that there's one straight out of the box, which is the portlet extension, or you can have it deployed as a jar, or a jar can be turned into an AMP, obviously. Which is how we do the resource management extension now. So we've actually, in the process of doing this as a proof of concept, we've actually pulled the portlet and the resource management functionality of share completely out, whereas before it was all tied in and there were lots of sort of conditional statements. Now it's a completely separate entity and it's all handled by extensions. There's two different ways you can do deployment of a module. Auto and manual. Basically, manual's default, and it means nothing will get deployed unless you say so. In automatic mode, any module, any extension config it finds will get processed, and those will be deployed. But if you're in auto mode, you have no control over the order. It's basically random. And you can change the mode if you want. But the other advantage of the manual deployment is that you can actually change the defaults of the module, so you can actually override aspects of the config, which can be very useful in itself as well. And the nice thing about it as well is that modules can be dynamically deployed and removed without server restart, which again I will hopefully successfully deploy to show you in a minute. So what are the benefits of this system? It's easy to add new, and I have to stress this is a coarse-grained approach to solving the problem. We haven't yet really solved the problem of getting into extend the JavaScript function. I'll talk about how we're going to focus on that in the future. So it's still at a course level for the components that are there, but it's easy to do it. It's easy to change the localization properties for web scripts, and this is really a starting block. The in-memory model that we made was a major change to Surf, and it's sort of going to pave the way for lots of enhancements we want to do in the future. And I'll give you some examples of what we're planning to do with that in future versions. But there are some limitations. As I said, it's still difficult to extend JavaScript because of the way that share is implemented. We can, and we're considering rewriting. It's not a major rewrite. It's just in terms of the component web scripts. We change the way that we instantiate the JavaScript objects. We can actually make the JavaScript much more extensible, which is something we're looking to do in the future. The markup directive, which I didn't actually explain. I'll be demonstrating it. The markup basically demarcates an area of web script code, and then it's just like, it doesn't do anything as such. It just says, right, this is effectively becomes an extension point. You say, like, I want to make this extensible, and then via that extension point, you can change, remove, or add content related to that. Subcomponents only work with WebScript, as I said, and at the moment you still have limited control over module overrides. The only thing you can really change is the course module deployment evaluators. We would like to be able to change much more of the module configuration at deployment time. Again, this will be something we'll be able to introduce in the future. Another useful thing that we've done is the surfbug tool, which again I'll give you a demonstration of. If you've ever tried to do any customization of share, and I found this when I started with the company, you look at a share page and you go, that's very nice, how is it all built? And you go in and you try and work out, but everything is completely fragmented. Everything, you've got web scripts in one place, you've got JavaScript libraries and CSS in somewhere else, you've got the pages and somewhere, everything's scattered around. It's very hard to look at a share page in a browser and work out, which files built this page. The surfbug basically shows you, all the information that you need to actually go and target what you want to customize. I'll give a demonstration of that as well. So that's the boring bit out of the way. Now let's try the risky live demonstration of how this stuff works. Right, so what we want to do is we want to add some new content. And there's different ways. There's the customization approach and there's the subcomponent approach. So we're going to show you two different ways. The first one we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do, we're actually going to create some content. So here's a very, very basic web script. It doesn't really do a lot. It's your traditional hello world. We've got a WebScript descriptor and we've got our template. There's no controller or config or internationalization properties, anything like that. So what we then want to do, and this is a bit tricky because I've got my presentation mode over there and I've got my browser over here, so I'm going to have to drive it from over here for added excitement. Right, so here we are. Here's share. I'm going to make sure I type my cunning password. Can you guess what it is? Alright, so here we go. Here's share. So the first thing I want to do is I actually want to work out, I want to add some content. The thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my new web script, I'm going to stick it above the administrator dashboard. I mean, it's not particularly, none of these examples are particularly useful. They're just showing, how you can do things. So, where's my mouse gone? This up here, this is Surfbug. This is a Firebug plugin that Kevin Roast wrote, which is quite cool. He's not published it yet. It's still just internal. But the way you'd get to Surfbug otherwise, hopefully you're familiar with the WebScript console. So if we scroll down, it's a little bit off the screen, but there's a button down here which says Enable Surfbug, which you click and Surfbug is enabled. And if I go back to, where's my mouse gone? Oh, there it was. I go back to my dashboard and I reload the page. You'll see that some horrible boxes have been drawn all over my nice share page. So the idea is, this is, the reason why they don't actually match to the components entirely is it's just done in an absolute layout. The early versions of this actually changed the HTML content in line, but that caused various problems, so I just sort of loosely place boxes in the right places. So what you can do is you pick a component you want to do, and this is the case I want to look at it. So I click on it and I get an absolute heap of information. So these things have disappeared off the screen a little bit. Is it shown? Oh no, it's off there as well. So I can see my page ID, I can see my template ID, I can see just basically all of the information I want, including very useful one, which I'll come to later. I can actually go and see the web script. Again, all this stuff this was there before. You could get through this for the web script URL, but this shows me all the information about the web script, so I can see all of the code that has defined this little part of the page. So how do you turn it off? So you can go back, and that actually says a button that says disable. So when you reload it, it disappears again. This, I'm hoping, when Kev's tinkered with this and finished off a little bit, he'll actually, because this is kind of cool, that you can just click it on and click it off. Makes finding stuff really easy. So the idea is you'd never run with this. This is purely a development tool. It's admin protected. You should be aware, though, if you switch it on, it's on for everybody. Because it's the content of the page. It's not limited to the user that's enabled it. So don't do this in a production system, because people might start complaining. So anyway, so what I've done there, if I switch back to my presentation, find my mouse again. So that's just sorry. Right, sorry, so this is me finding the area within share. And so then I want to actually define a new subcomponent. So define a single extension. I create a set of modules. I put my module in it. Here's my some information. I've targeted the component. So I'm saying that the component that I want to put in is a new component. So the subcomponent there is called new content. The index is 25. So the default index for a default component that's converted from a legacy configuration is 50. So 25 is saying I want to put this before. If it was after 50, it would appear obviously below. So surfbug told me the region ID, the source ID, and the scope that I wanted to target, and then I added as many subcomponents in as I want. And then I want to deploy the module. I'll show this live as well. There's a button there. Come on. So again, on the yeah, that's probably a good idea. See, that's why you're here, Mike, for good suggestions like that. Okay, so the module deployment is just a web script. We want to put a better link than this, but this is the way to get to. You can obviously put a URL in directly. This is a pure Spring Surf web script page. So the UI at the moment is a little bit limited because there's no client-side libraries, there's no UE libraries built into Surf. They're only in Share, so this is just pure old-fashioned HTML and JavaScript, so it's a little bit limited, so it's nothing snazzy. But so these are all basically I've got all of my my modules that I've dropped into Share. I haven't shown you either, I'll show you in a second. And the one here's the new content module. So here it is. I select it, I add it, I apply the changes, go back to my dashboard. If I refresh, there you go. So no server restart. It all works dynamically. Right. And that was what I was. Okay. Right. So that's the end result. So say I want to hide some content. So the way we do that is we actually target some content. So what I've done, I'm going to target the same component I did before. This time you'll notice that I'm actually the ID of the subcomponent is default. Again, I could find that from looking at Surfbug. I mean, that's always. I'm not going to keep going through that, but that's the idea. You find a thing you want to customize through Surfbug. You plug in the content there, and then here the key thing that I'm doing is I'm using this render tag within the evaluation. You'll notice as well that the evaluation has no evaluators, and an evaluation will always succeed in true if there are no evaluators. So this is just a shortcut way of saying I always want this to work. If you're doing a subcomponent that you want to hide, this is the quickest way of doing it. So let's demonstrate that. So what I need to do is go back to let's remove this one. I'll apply the change. And refresh just to prove that's still working dynamically. I'm going to hide the title. And then this time, as if by magic, the title disappears. So that's how you hide the title. So again, that's what the result would have been. So yeah, that's good. But what if we want to do something conditionally? So what we're going to do is we're going to create an evaluator. So the evaluator is a Java interface. There's actually a default subcomponent evaluator which you can extend if you want to. It's just it's just makes it it's fairly straightforward to do that. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I've not plugged my power in. Sorry, just got a warning on the screen. Apologies for the delay. All right, cheers, thank you. Right, so this is a very simple evaluator. What I'm going to do is, the way an evaluator works is, you've got parameters that you provide, and you get all the information out of the request. So from the information, I'm actually going to look in the context, and I'm going to see what site we're on. And if the site is defined, then I am going to, I'm just going to check basically that this is going to work and then I'm going to define a parameter in my config, which can say which site I want to hide for. So Evaluator is a Spring Bean, so I actually have to define a new application context file and just reference it there. And then what you can see here, same sort of thing. This time, I've still got my render in, but what I'm doing is I'm saying that for this time I'm providing an evaluator, which is the evaluator which I've just defined as a Spring Bean, and I'm saying if the site is called some other site, then it's going to render true. Otherwise, it's not. So let's go back to my module deployment. Remove this one. Let's go to conditionally hide one, which I've created. Go back to the dashboard. Just going to refresh that. Going to go to create site. So let's call that site 1. You can see the title's still there. And then I'm going to create another site called some other site. You can see it's not there. So, sorry, site 1. So that's the bar there. Tile disappeared. And that was just a really simple example of Evaluator. You know, I could have hard-coded the value into the evaluator if I wanted to. It doesn't have to have been looking at the site. It could have been looking at a user. You could hide certain things for user, or if it's an admin, or whatever you want. It's entirely up to you. It's just an example of what you can do. So again, that's an example of what should happen. So say I want to add some more content. I'm going to use SurfBug again. This time I'm going to do a customization rather than a subcomponent. So what I want to do is I actually want to find a template. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to add a new region in entirely. So here's what I want to do. Here's a customization. So the way it works is you say the package you want to target, and you basically map a new package to the package. So this can be as broad or as narrow as you want. So I'm going to try and apply anything in the org Alfresco package, and I'm going to look for an equivalent file name in the blog demo customization package. So I knew what the file was called from SurfBug. So here's what I want to do. So in my, I created the same file dashboard free FTL. I'm specifying a region tag, giving it an ID of in choosing. The target is the region that this wants to be coded in reference to. The action, there's a number of different actions. You can say before, you can say after, you can say modify, you can say remove, and the scope has to be whatever the scope is. So the scope has to be global because of the way because if it was template or page, it would mean that component would have to be defined in the template or the page. It has to be global. So then there's how I've configured. Where I've put the file. You can see that it matches the package location. And I have to define a component again, because just putting a region on its own is no good. It has to bind to something. So then I define the region that I've just specified. Again, it's global. And then I map to the same web script URL that we defined earlier. Oh, hang on. Sorry. And then going back to, let's remove that one. And then I want to add a region. I mean, you're going to be, it's not exactly earth-shattering what's going to happen. I think I'm still on a site, aren't I? Oh, there it is. So there you go. And the hello world is back again. So we want to hide some content. We want to do, and I know I'm sort of labouring the point of it, but this is just to show you that there are many different ways of doing this. This time I'm actually, because this is on the same region, I'm going to actually add another region. This time I'm targeting the title, and I actually want to add something in. So this is going to be here's what I did earlier. grab that bit of code. Paste that in there. Now this is the only time that I'm going to actually have to demonstrate stopping and starting the server, because I'm redeploying my my jar. So this is where all my code is in Eclipse. I've got my little create jar thing, and it's actually putting it into. Let's just pull this into somewhere where you can see it. And if you can just see that blog demo jar has just been created. It's in the share webinf lib. It could, if you wanted to go into the shared lib or anywhere on the class path. And now, if I go back to the after, because I've restarted the server, which you didn't see because it was my other display. Again, no. Helps if you restart the server after you've just stopped it. So just wait for that to come up. So I've got to authenticate again. You see, that's an example of the. You can see it was persisted. That's the other thing. Modules that you deploy survive server restart because they actually get persisted into the DM store. So it's going to add it in again because it was the same config as before. So this time it's going to be the slightly different code. So, oh, actually no, it did pick up the new version. So I'm not sure if you see that there is another blue bar above that which has gone as well. So the main title is gone, and I've still got the hello world because I was still adding in a new region. So you can do multiple things within a single template. Okay, so as I said, the other things you can do after, which, as you might guess, puts it after rather than before a title, and modify would actually change the directive. It's not necessarily so useful for region because there's no embedded content within a region. But if you were using the markup, so if I'd actually said I'd actually mark something as being a markup directive, I can actually change all the HTML content within that if I wanted to, using the modify switch. So say I want to override a label. Again, this one's a little bit more drilling into this. So I've gone into, these are stacked up, I've gone into ServBug, I've looked at the particular web script, I've gone down to the section that refers to the user properties, and I've found that I've actually found that the header, so it's header.dashboard, and that shows you the dashboard. So what I actually want to do is I want to change the behavior of that file. So I've targeted again, this is a more specific package you'll notice, but it's being mapped to the same package as before. And this time I've just put in the property that I want to customize. You'll note that that whereas before it was the web script that was being referenced was a completely default locale. It wasn't the EN one, but when you're doing a customization, you have to be specific about the locale. So I'm going to change the B customized title, but I still keep ruining it by not doing the demo. That was my backup for if it all went horribly wrong. So let's go back and do this. I18 properties. Go back to there. Need to go. It's actually on the dashboard that I've changed it. You can see it says customized title bar. Again, this is, it's not earth-shattering, the examples I'm showing, but these are just giving you an idea of, the entry points, what you actually want to do with them. You can actually, do much more creative things with these. So what about if I want to override the JavaScript control? This one's a bit more complicated because you have to have a little bit more intrinsic understanding of what the web script's doing in order to know whether or not changing the JavaScript controller is going to have an effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with the web view dashlet, which I actually need to put on my page. So let's go and add a dashlet. Let's go and look at the web view. I'm just going to put that a little bit at the top. So here it is. Here's my WebView dashlet. And you'll notice by default it comes up if there's no content to display, then it just comes up and says no web page to display. So I want to say, well, I don't want to do that. If there's no content, actually what I want to do is I want to make it display the Alfresco homepage, which is one good reason why I do need Ethernet connectivity. Right. So again, same thing as before. I'm skipping this step, but I look at Surfbug, I look at the WebView dashlet, I work out, I can see which package it's in, so that's the package I want to target. Drop my file in, and it's a JavaScript control. What I'm saying is I'm updating the model, so I'm saying, well, I'm changing the title, I'm changing the URI, and it's only happening if it's in default. So. Yeah, sorry, exactly. That's exactly how it happens. The first JavaScript control, the default controller runs and it creates your model, and then basically you give extensions a shot at the model. So it then says, well, okay, well I'm going to change it. So and in that way, if you have multiple extensions extending the same JavaScript controller, then in this case the last one wins because it's the last change to the model, and you don't actually have to have a controller in the web script originally. You can actually add one even if there wasn't one in the first place. Okay, so let's remove my last. You can obviously have as many. I know I'll keep removing one for simplicity. You can actually have. I could put all of these in, and you can have as many modules as you want. So where's my JavaScript controller? So I add it in. This time I refresh. Hopefully I actually have some connectivity. Oh yeah, and it obviously asks me what my login. But you get the idea. It's actually gone to point to the Alfresco web page, as would be shown there from the little tiny corner bit you get. So that's the basic gist of the customizations. I mean, and all of these examples that I've just shown are all on my Alfresco blog. If you want to go through them, there's detailed instructions for going through. There's been quite a bit of feedback on the various, people have tried to do some quite interesting things. Someone tried to reorder an entire template by basically removing regions and then adding them back in somewhere else. And that actually, I didn't think that was going to work, but amazingly, it actually did work. There's an auto readme example, which was something that was in the Explorer client, and that example's up there as well. If the file is of a particular name, then it automatically displays the content of it. One of the guys in the UI team put a blog post up putting a peer-bind chat service, which is quite cool. So you could basically have a little chat client embedded within the share client. It's sort of the world's your oyster, really, as I said. And then you've got the resource management module and the portlet module, which come. The portlet one's in there by default, as you will have seen. The resource management one, as before, you have to apply the AMP in order to get it, and you then still have to deploy it. But yeah, so those are the other types of customization that you can do. So where are we going to take this? At the moment, it's still pretty, limited. Well, I want to do dependency directives. One of the main problems at the moment, it's not a huge problem, but we have to do this double pass processing. Every time you go over a web script, you look at the head file from the web script so that we can actually insert the CSS and JavaScript dependencies into the head of the HTML file. We'd like to avoid doing that, and actually, because we now have this in-memory model, we actually want to have a head directive, I think is in the prototype I've got running, where when you use that, I'm going to wrap this up very quickly. Then we can go to some questions. So basically you'll use the head, and so you won't have to do this double pass system. Then you can put your dependencies straight in at any point in the cycle. And the other cool thing that I've actually done, which is the last thing, is I've used this. By using this, we've actually got a prototype where we actually take all of the dependencies so all the JavaScript dependencies and all the CSS resources, and we can actually collate them into a single resource, and then we can actually compress them on the fly, and then we'll actually only import one file at a time. And we've actually used We've actually used MD5 checksum to actually generate a resource, so it knows everything's unique. So if you go to different pages, it's got different resources, then it'll get a new MD5 generated. If you're always going back to the same page, it means the stuff's cached. This also will solve the problem that we've had on the upgrade path, whereas because if the content's changed, you're going to get a different MD5 checksum. And in the tests we've run, this obviously, by the way, this isn't in Alfresco 4. This is just like a prototype branch that I've got that I've been working on. That's going to solve a few problems, and the performance actually increases. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce probably this widget directive. So the idea there is that rather than, and this is how we're going to enable you to get into the JavaScript code much simpler. Instead of hard coding the value of the Alfresco JavaScript object that we want to instantiate, we're actually going to use this widget, and we're going to take the name of the JavaScript object that you want to instantiate from the controller, and all of the properties from the controller as well. So you can use the JavaScript controller approach to extend. So you can say, well, hey, I don't want to install our org Alfresco document library. I want to do my custom library. So you use the head tag. You could then put your own library, which extends document library, the document list Alfresco widget via standard JavaScript and extension pattern, and then you change in the controller, you change the name of the widget you want to instantiate, change the properties should you wish, and then when it's applied, it means you'll actually instantiate your own widget rather than the default one, and then you can do whatever you want because it's JavaScript. And that will make it much easier to get right into the fine-grained aspects of the components on the page. That's the limitation with what we have at the moment, but this is how we're going to solve it going forwards. So additional reading. There's my blog that's up there. Also, I said David Webster's got some blog posts. Eric Wineleaf's got some blog posts as well. I'm trying very hard at the moment to respond to anything on the Surf Development Forum. So if you have any questions, you can post them up there, and I'll try and answer them as best I can. I went crazy with blogs to start with, but I've slackened off because we've been in bug fixing mode. But I'm going to keep writing more blogs to try and give examples of the way you can do things. So if you have any requests for something you'd like to see, put a post on the forum, and if it's worth me doing a blog on it, I will, to give some examples of how you can do these things. Questions? Now that I've probably close to running over. Anyone? Yes.
It's not relevant to this, but I struggled with trying to redo the layout.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some simple way, creating, you have narrow or narrow. Just trying to read.
Actually, interesting enough, if you go to Eric's put a blog up on that very subject. Actually, Eric Wineleaf, I think he's actually done some sort of pre-can templates, some good examples of how you can do that kind of stuff. We do need to have more documentation on how to do these things, and we are going to start doing that through blog posts, and eventually it will make its way into proper documentation. But that's probably the best place to start for looking at that. It's Wineleaf. It's how it's pronounced. It's Winlof with an umlaut over the O. If you go to the main Alfresco website, go to community, go to blogs, and then you'll find him down there on the list. Yeah.
Are you seeing serve usage outside of Alfresco?
Not that I know of. Are we seeing surf usage outside of Alfresco? And I don't believe we've had any usage of it, unfortunately.
Actually, constantly taking white.
Okay, right.
So, in 3.4, there's a lot more for XML configuration. You see in the directories, you can see basically that standard Alfresco XML override capability. One thing I haven't seen is there a way to override files like the preset files and other things that control, like so when you install new site types?
Yeah, so that's always actually been in there. I mean, that's just that's surf config. You can go in and you can actually change that. If you went and look at the surf SVN, there's an FET application, and that actually, because the default presets write to the DM store. Obviously, in the little individual Spring Surf FET, we don't have that luxury. So I actually create a persister for the remote store, and actually shows there's how we've changed the presets to do it there. That's actually a blog I'd like to write, actually, because the preset stuff is pretty complex. But it's all there's a lot of Spring Surf is actually incredibly customizable. For the cloud stuff, we reworked share entirely through Surf to make those changes. There isn't enough documentation on it.
I still see a lot of, it seems like the configuration, you still end up copying and pasting other people's stuff to not, so that you don't disrupt what's there.
Yeah.
So it didn't look to me like that was easy to just override that particular, for instance, that particular file and just say, this is just my stuff in addition to what's there, regardless of what anybody else has installed.
Okay, so if for the presets, for example, that would be a different case because because there's only the one presets file that's being used. So that in that case, that wasn't a use case that we targeted. If that's something that if you feed that back in via the community, then there's things we'll look at if that's something we need to do. Anyone else? Oh,
I was working on a specialized site for a department and building lots of 10 widgets or dashlets. And then I realized, well, everybody's going to see these dashlets. Is there some way to kind of filter out, when you go and you basically, it's either within the site dashlet kind of configuration or like an end user. You may not, well, the way you've got that set up, you're going to have...
So when you go to customize, you see all the dashlets
you're going to see
available.
everything. There's no nesting. There's no...
Yeah.
Yeah, or you say for this site you only see these dashlets. Or,
the answer would be yes, you can do that. My answer would be I've not done that, and I've not done a lot of work with the dashlet config, so I don't actually know how you do that. But basically, the whole thing works the same way. So that list will be derived from a web script somewhere, and then if you went in with SpringServe, you could target the component that's generating that list, and you could filter it somehow doing that way. So yeah, it would be possible, but I couldn't give you an exact answer. I can go away and take a look at that for you if you'd like.
okay.
You said that there was some module information that was persisted in the store.
Right.
I'm curious, what's that?
Oh, well, so basically, the extension config I showed you is like is like a vanilla config. So obviously, when you that doesn't get deployed, so you can have as many extensions, unless you're in auto deploy mode, you can have as many extension configs in as you like and have no effect at all. If you're in manual mode, that is. As soon as you deploy something and you want to put, I didn't actually show that. If I just come back to the web script, you probably saw this stuff lurking over here. When you click on this, you can see that I can change things. One of the main things you can change, we've got some evaluators that are sort of available out of the box. For like a site evaluator, you can sort of determine which sites it applies to and etc., which site presets. So I could actually go in and I can override the config. And when you actually say, when I hit the apply button, what you'll notice up here, and this is sort of a limited UI because it's just in SpringServe, this timestamp tells you the last time. If I click the apply, so if I were to put in, hang on, sorry. If I were to put in whatever, I can't remember which one this is. If I put in site 1, when I hit the apply button, hit update first of all to actually make the change. When I apply it, you should see the timestamp is going to change to indicate, and that's basically, it takes the extension file, the extension config, it takes the override that you've provided, and it creates a new surf configuration object, and that actually gets persistent exactly the same way that, say, when you create a new user, gets a new dashboard or a site dashboard, those live in the DM store. It's exactly the same way. It's just somewhere that Surf goes looking for configuration.
I think it's last question.
I've not done much playing around with 3.4 on Share, but when you're doing like remote calls to Alfresco, we've been doing a lot of Ajax stuff lately. Using the Alfresco proxy, like the Share proxy, works fine for GET requests, but it seems to be whenever we do a POST request, there's like massive lag.
Oh, really?
Has that been fixed?
I didn't.
It's in 3.2. That was.
Okay. I'd have to talk to. I wouldn't know that. I mean, that was.
So
I wouldn't know about that. I could find out. I could look into that. I don't know if there's been a Jira issue raised. I wasn't aware.
We usually have to just push it, just having a share web script to do a remote call to an Alfresco web script. So I guess that's another question. Is there anything in 3.4 or any new developments that's going to allow you to talk directly as if you would normally do in Alfresco web scripts without having to duplicate web scripts and share an Alfresco just to get the things you want done?
No, the answer is no at the moment. There's not been any work on in that
All right,
regard.
cool.
But you still have to go through the proxy, I'm afraid.
Yeah. All right.
Okay,
Cheers.
Use the same as fine.
Yeah,
Okay. Thanks, guys.